Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine launching a brand new premium flagship smartphone. It's packed with, cutting-edge camera tech, unique features, and you've positioned it squarely for the most discerning tech enthusiasts, content creators.
The top-tier users.
Exactly. And then just weeks into its debut, you have to hit the brakes. Hard.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happened with Sony's latest device, the Xperia 1, the 7th.
Yeah.
We're talking a sales suspension across multiple key markets.
Right.
All because of some, truly nasty software glitches.
And what's really fascinating here, I think, is that this isn't just some minor bug fix needed. No, it's actually being described as a phone-killing bug. I mean, literally rendering some units completely inoperable.
Wow, phone killing.
Yeah. So this deep dive is all about understanding, what exactly went wrong here. Why is it such a significant setback for Sony? And maybe bigger picture, what does it reveal about the intense pressures, the delicate balances within the whole global smartphone market? We'll be digging into the sources, extracting the key info, so you can walk away really understanding the situation.
Okay, so let's set the scene a bit. The Xperia 1, the 7th, it was officially unveiled, May 15th, 2025?
That's right, mid-May, and then the actual market release was early June.
Early June. And this wasn't a budget phone. We're talking premium pricing.
Yeah.
$1,499 for the 256 gig model in Europe.
Yep, definitely top-end pricing.
And it was designed to appeal, right? Advanced camera system, co-developed with Sony's Alpha camera tech.
Which is a big deal for camera buffs.
Huge deal.
Yeah.
Robust battery, and those features that are becoming kind of rare now, like a traditional headphone jack.
And a removable SD card slot. You just don't see those much on flagships anymore.
Exactly. Both rarities.
However, within just a few weeks of hitting the market, bam, the brakes slammed on hard.
Weeks.
Mere weeks, yeah. Sony announced a temporary suspension of sales and shipments. And this wasn't like a cautious, maybe. It was a direct response to users reporting just critical software malfunctions, lots of them, piling up fast.
So the number of reports was significant.
It seems so. The swiftness and how broad the suspension was, for a device so early in its life, it really underscores just how severe these problems must be.
And where exactly did they suspend sales? We know Japan.
Yeah, official confirmation came for Sony's home turf, Japan, and also Hong Kong and Taiwan.
Okay.
But even where it wasn't officially confirmed, the signs were there. Strong indications of a broader impact, pre-orders getting canceled across Europe. Sony UK suddenly listing the device is just out of stock, and the upcoming launch in Malaysia looks likely delayed.
So basically, Asia, Europe, UK were the initial launch zones, but not the US, interestingly.
Right, not available in the United States, which actually continues a trend from the phone right before it, the predecessor.
Okay, so let's get to the core of it. These phone-killing bugs, as you called them. What are users actually experiencing?
Well, it's not just minor annoyances, like an app crashing occasionally. These are fundamental operational failures.
Okay.
Users consistently reported their Xperia 1Z 7th units occasionally experiences issues such as the device shutting down, rebooting, or not turning on during use. That's the official description filtering through.
Shutting down, rebooting, or not turning on. That covers pretty much everything you don't want your phone to do.
Pretty much. And the worst part, the really critical manifestation, is what's being called that phone-killing bug. Affected devices just spontaneously reset.
Okay.
And then may refuse to turn back on. Just bricked.
Bricked. Wow.
Effectively, yeah, bricking them in some instances. And we're hearing this is affecting a, quote, significant number of devices in the wild.
So for you, the consumer, this is just profoundly disruptive, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
You hear users saying things like no fun at all. That feeling that a software update can be your last, that's terrifying.
It really is. It creates this sense of, precariousness with the device you rely on.
And the data loss aspect. Sony themselves are recommending backups, warning that software repairs wipe the internal memory. That's a huge deal.
Huge, especially if the phone won't even turn on to let you back it up first.
Right. So what are the suspected causes? Sony's investigating, obviously.
They are, and their immediate advice, telling people to do a software update, that strongly suggests they believe it's primarily a software-related root cause. Makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's the first place you'd look.
There was also an early report hinting the bug might be tied to a feature only available in Japan, like a specific network integration thing, maybe?
Okay. Japan-specific.
Possibly. And then you've got the user speculation, especially on places like Reddit, people suggesting maybe a glitch in the network connectivity stuff.
Like 5G issues?
Some users reported that maybe sticking to 4G instead of 5G helped a bit. It's all anecdotal at this stage, but interesting.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really, really interesting, I think.
Oh, go on. Is this something completely new, or have we seen this movie before with Sony?
Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Because when you look at the historical context, multiple Reddit users are saying, quite forcefully, that this is a long-time problem of Xperia's.
Really? Not just this model?
Apparently not. They're citing similar issues, spontaneous reboots, phones getting stuck during startup, just failing to turn on with older models like the XE1C, the Z3, the XE1.
Wow. Going back years then.
Yeah, and sometimes they linked it to things like deleting large amounts of cache or data, or even charging the phone to full. Weird triggers.
So if we zoom out for a second, this recurring pattern across different generations, what does that suggest?
It suggests potentially something deeper. Maybe a long-standing systemic vulnerability, or perhaps an architectural flaw within how Sony implements Android, their specific flavor of it. It points beyond just an isolated bug in this even. Maybe something flawed in how Sony manages core system processes or power states or even those networked interactions we mentioned.
That sounds more fundamental.
It could be. And then layer on top of this, while Sony's fix points to software, Phone did speculate about underlying hardware problems.
Hardware. That would be much worse.
Much worse. And complicating that, reports surfaced back in late May that Sony might be outsourcing hardware manufacturing to third parties, possibly starting with this very phone, the Xperia 1, the 7.
That's all sourcing.
Now, it's unconfirmed, both the hardware issue and the outsourcing link. But it adds this critical layer of uncertainty. Because if the problem is hardware, or maybe some complex clash between outsourced hardware and Sony's software, well, the fix gets a lot harder, takes longer, and costs a lot more.
Okay, so that's the potential why. What about Sony's official response? What are they actually saying and doing?
Officially, Sony has acknowledged it. They've put out statements saying some Xperia 1 VII devices are, quote, experiencing issues such as unexpected shutdowns, reboots, or failure to power on.
So they admit the problem exists?
Yes. They've confirmed they are currently investigating the cause, and they promise they'll provide further updates. Standard corporate speak, but it's an acknowledgement.
And the action they've taken?
The main action is that temporary suspension of sales and shipments we talked about.
Right.
But it's important to note they have not issued a full recall.
Ah, okay. So they seem to believe it's fixable without needing every single phone back.
That seems to be the implication, yes. Suggests they think a software patch or maybe a software repair process can handle it for most affected users.
And what are they telling those users to do right now?
For affected users, the guidance is pretty specific. First, try a hard reset. You know the drill. Hold power and volume up together for about 20 seconds.
The classic turn it off and on again, but harder.
Pretty much, yeah. Then make sure you've got the absolute latest software version installed. And for the more severe cases, the ones where it won't boot properly, they recommend performing a software repair using a computer and the Xperia companion application. It's their desktop tool.
Okay, so a more involved fix, like flashing the software fresh.
Essentially, yes. But here's that critical warning that comes with it.
The data loss one.
Exactly. Sony explicitly states, all files stored in the internal memory of your device will be deleted during that software repair.
Ouch.
And crucially, you can't back up your data if the phone won't even complete its startup sequence properly.
So you could lose everything. Photos, messages, everything.
Potentially, yes. It highlights a really significant burden on the user and the risk of catastrophic personal data loss.
Yeah, that's rough. Is there any timeline for when this might be resolved, when sales might resume?
That's the other notable thing, the lack of a clear timeline. Sony has explicitly not said how long the suspension will last. They just say they'll provide more information once it is available.
It's a limbo.
Pretty much. It creates this kind of strategic ambiguity in their communication. On one hand, they suggest a fix is possible, right? Via software updates or repair.
Right. Trying to reassure people.
But on the other hand, they admit they're still investigating the root cause, which you really need to know for a definitive, permanent fix.
So they're saying, we think we can fix it, but also we don't know exactly what's wrong yet.
Precisely. It feels like maybe an attempt to manage the immediate public perception, calm things down a bit, while buying themselves more time for that deeper investigation.
Okay, let's talk about the phone itself for a moment, beyond the bugs. We mentioned the camera, the headphone jack.
Yeah.
What else made this Xperia 1 VII stand out? It had the latest Qualcomm chip, right?
Yeah, the Snapdragon 8 Elite chipset, top-of-the-line processing power. It also boasted a no-notch display, which some people really appreciate.
Clean look.
Very clean. Gorilla Glass Victus 2 protection. And that camera system, it wasn't just the Alpha co-design. It had a 48MP main sensor, a 48MP ultra-wide, and a 12MP periscope telephoto lens with variable optical zoom. Really versatile setup.
Impressive specs. And audio? Sony usually cares about audio.
They do. And reports suggested arguably the best speaker on a phone, stereo spatial sound. And excellent output from that traditional headphone jack, apparently capable of driving even high-impedance headphones properly.
Okay. Good battery size, too.
Decent, yeah. 5,100 milliamp battery with 33W fast charging. Not the absolute fastest charging, but a solid battery capacity. Plus IP68 water resistance.
And the software experience, aside from the,
Yeah.
major bugs.
Well, ironically, the software experience itself was described quite positively before this blew up. Good old vanilla Android, no bloatware. That's a direct quote.
Clean Android is always nice.
And Sony made a big commitment on updates this time. 4 OS upgrades and 6 years of security patches. That's a notable improvement for them.
4 OS upgrades, 6 years security. That's competing with Google and Samsung.
Getting close, yeah. So you piece all that together, the specs, the features, the software promise. Who is this phone really for?
Seems like a very specific type of user.
Exactly. It's clearly designed for a niche. Those tech enthusiasts, the content creators, maybe even gamers. People who specifically seek out the Sony brand, maybe.
Or people who desperately want that SD card slot and headphone jack back.
Absolutely. Those are key differentiators. Plus, seamless integration with PlayStation controllers, using it as an external monitor for their alpha cameras, that ecosystem play.
Right.
But here's the problem, right? When a core function, like the basic stability of the device, just turning on and staying on, fails catastrophically.
All those niche features become irrelevant?
Completely irrelevant. This whole incident just exposes the fragility of that new strategy if you can't get the fundamentals right, especially for a premium device. Basic reliability, that's table stakes. It's foundational.
Non-negotiable.
Without it, no amount of specialized features can justify that high price or keep customers loyal.
And what's the feeling among those potential niche customers now? What are you seeing online, like on Reddit?
Oh, the sentiment ranges from, profound frustration
Understandable.
to almost a sense of resignation. Like, here we go again. Comments frequently highlight this feeling of living on the edge with Xperia devices.
Living on the edge.
Yeah, expressing that fear we mentioned that a software update can be your last. There's real exasperation with what users perceive as Sony's long-standing issues.
Because, as you said, older models had similar problems reported.
Exactly. Sporadic reboots, power-on problems. It's not entirely new, according to these longtime users.
So this current crisis isn't seen in isolation.
Not by many long-term fans, no. It gets amplified. Instead of being viewed as a one-off disaster for the 1/7, it's perceived as just a continuation of Sony's struggles in mobile software. It reinforces negative stereotypes.
That's damaging for the brand.
Hugely damaging. There's a palpable sense of disappointment, a feeling that Sony isn't really listening to its most dedicated fans. You see sentiments like, Sony, are you listening? Fans are leaving. And the criticism goes beyond just these glitches. Recurring comments pop up saying, Sony never had great software, or that buggy software is one of my biggest pet peeves with the Xperia lineup.
So there's a history of software complaints even before this phone-killing bug emerged.
Apparently so, yeah.
Yeah.
Which just makes this current situation sting even more for their user base.
Looking at the business side, this sales suspension has to hurt Sony's bottom line, right?
Yeah.
Especially for a premium phone.
Oh, absolutely. Directly and negatively. It impacts the initial sales volumes, the revenue targets for this specific model.
Yeah.
And given that high price tag, every single lost sale is a substantial hit to revenue.
So this jeopardizes their efforts just to stay relevant, stay profitable in the smartphone market, which is already super competitive.
It really does. Some people are even speculating online, could this be the final nail in Sony's coffin for their mobile ambitions?
Wow, that's serious.
Well, it's speculation, but it shows the level of concern. For others suggesting the whole Xperia line is maybe just a lost write-off for the wider Sony corporation.
A way to keep the brand present, but not necessarily profitable on its own.
Possibly. And it ties back to that potential strategic vulnerability we discussed earlier.
The outsourcing.
Yeah. If Sony is indeed shifting to outsourcing hardware manufacturing for the Xperia 1/7, this whole mess could be an early, painful sign of challenges. Problems integrating new supply chains, maybe? Or maintaining their usually high-quality control standards with third-party partners?
That raises a huge question for their future strategy then.
It really does. Are they chasing cost savings or maybe specialized manufacturing they can't do in-house anymore, but at the expense of product reliability?
And for a brand like Sony, built on engineering excellence.
Exactly. Any perception that quality control is slipping could severely undermine that long-term brand trust. It's a dangerous game.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener, if you are thinking about buying this phone?
Well, if you're a prospective buyer, the clear advice is exercise caution. Significant caution.
Hold off for now.
Definitely hold off considering the Xperia 1 until Sony provides a clear, verified fix and confidently resumes sales. Don't be an early adopter guinea pig on this one.
And if you already bought one, before the suspension,
If you're an existing user, data backup. Prioritize it, seriously, like right now if you can.
don't wait.
Do not wait. And looking forward, Sony needs more than just a patch. They need a real strategy to rebuild trust.
How?
Through transparent, timely communication, tell people what's really going on. A swift and comprehensive resolution, fix it properly. Enhanced quality control going forward, convince people this won't happen again. And probably better customer support for those affected.
Yeah, a lot needs to happen to recover from this.
Definitely.
Okay, so that really brings our deep dive into the Sony Xperia 1C with cell suspension to a close. It's clearly more than just a product recall situation. It starkly highlights what seem to be long-standing challenges in Sony's software quality. It pours fuel on existing negative user perceptions. And it puts immense pressure on a mobile division that was already navigating a really tough niche market.
Absolutely. And if we connect it to the bigger picture, it just underscores that critical importance of foundational reliability. You can have all the fancy features in the world,
Right.
but if the phone doesn't reliably turn on, none of it matters, especially for a premium product. Sony's ability to navigate this mess with transparency, a real fix, and a renewed commitment to quality will really determine the immediate fate of this phone, the Xperia 1.7.
And maybe more.
And critically, I think, the longer-term trajectory of their entire mobile ambitions.
So ultimately, what does this whole situation impress upon us? You know, in a world where our phones are so central to everything, what happens when a device from a legacy brand, a respected brand like Sony, one that you've paid a significant premium for, struggles with the most basic function just turning on? It raises a pretty important question for all of us, doesn't it? About what we truly value in our tech. Is it the cutting-edge specs? The brand name? Or is it something more fundamental? And what should we really expect, demand, from the companies that build these devices we rely on so heavily?